this is the challenge with a session and all of these very, very large bills coming at the end. And working with Aponte Busam and staff, we need to be really strategic in where we are dedicating our staff resources and where the biggest fights need to be. As you all know, obviously Senate Bill 23-213 is kind of where we've been dedicating an incredible amount of resources and times. And we have some strategies and updates that we want to share on that one, and we'll dive into that one at the end, as we anticipate that will take the majority of our time. But I just want to kind of set with that. I know Ruth and I just connected. I think you guys were at the Capitol till midnight last night. We didn't finish our meeting until 8. There's more meetings again tonight. And so again, to be truly effective, we are going to have to start getting strategic in where our priorities are. And I want to just give a shout out to Ruth and Dave for helping us navigate it, because I think it's been a more hectic end of session than I think typically. And I think there's some toxicity happening right now because of the bills, and there's a lot of headbutting happening, and that makes it hard to have productive conversations between our senators, our representatives, the governor's office, developers in the land use case. And so it's just really hard to be productive and progressive right now in those conversations. So let me look at my notes quickly. So the last day of the session is May 8th. One thing I wanted to mention is currently we have the wrap-up meeting scheduled for May 4th with this group, which is obviously before the last day and probably not the most productive way to do that. So we would like to push it out to the 18th, just 2 weeks later, but keeping the same time. I know Devin and Lori, we only have you on the phone for council, but any initial concerns? I did check the calendar and didn't see any. But wanted to see if you guys had any concerns, and if not, we'll put that in the CMO update tomorrow. Okay, I don't hear any, so I'm gonna plan on, we'll send that out to council. It'll just be the better use of time, since the session won't be over otherwise. And it is already on the council calendar because we weren't sure exactly the end date. So the time's already blocked out. We'll just update it to remove that earlier one. Let's see. A couple of things that I think are exciting to talk about. So Lori, you mentioned when we started, today is the force pooling bill in committee, and we have 2 people testifying. So Councilmember Lim is down there. She shared that with all of council, and we're excited to say that also City Attorney Nancy Rogers, who joined us, is also testifying. She has her testifying clothes on, I can see, and is ready to go. So thank you, Nancy, for taking the time to be down there. And then I also want to mention, we talked about the mental health assessment bill as well. Lori and Devin, I think you two specifically had brought that one up. Jason is actually going to be testifying, and I think that's tomorrow. Is that tomorrow now, Jason, or next week? What day is it now?
Actually, today.
Oh, okay. Today is a big day for us. So we are engaging staff where we can and where we think it will be helpful. So I just wanted to mention that to the group as well. And then again, I already talked about just kind of staff expectations and the lobby team of, we're going to have to get really thoughtful in where we dedicate our time. Right now, again, like I said, the land use bill, and then we'll talk a little bit about the air quality measure bill and the COGCC expansion of regulatory oversight bill that is supposed to come. As of right now, I just checked before we got on this call, I have not seen either of those bills be introduced. Lori, you may have a more update. We are anticipating it Monday with a press release. We do have press release going out around the air quality bill, but no formal introduction yet. So still more to come on both of those fronts. So with that, I'm not sure, Dave, do you just, let me see, has Ruth been able to jump on yet? Okay, Dave, do you want to just talk about the bills you were going to talk about, and then I'll do the ones that I was going to do?
Of course. And then I did see Councilmember Schaaf had his hand up if you wanted to jump in.
Yeah, just really quickly. So I think that, as we move forward in terms of the, conversation we were just having in terms of level 1 support, level 2 support, things like that, I think that we should calculate staff involvement, because I do appreciate both Nancy and Jason being a part of those testimony, but I do think that we have to put that into our calculation as we're going towards our level 1 support, level 2 support, and seeing how much staff resources are we using? And that's important for me as a council member to understand that when we signal this as a level 1 support or a level 1 opposition, what does that mean in terms of our staff and their time resources, as well as their dedication to this? And so if it's just a fundamental policy, we support this and we want to signal that, it would be a lot more in where we're saying to our staff, we want you to participate, actively participate. 2013 is a great example of that, right? We have a large amount of people that are providing input, and we have to realize that that is a different level of commitment. So I just want to make sure that as we continue to move forward, that we have these conversations, because and to also let you know that for me as a council member, it's very important that that we're aware of what that looks like on the back end as well.
Well, I'll just say, and I'm sure all of the staff that's been working on this, if they were on this call right now, would say thank you for that, Devin, and for being mindful of that, because it's, and I know Dave, you can see it in our faces, right? It's been a little bit of a challenge and a time suck, because everything else shifts, right, to adjust. And we do have to be nimble, and we understand that, but again, in a thoughtful way. So I made a note, and I'll think about ways we can share that more transparently with council as well, Devin, when you guys do take those positions, or what it does look like. So thank you for mentioning that.
Council member Schaaf too. I also serve on the Colorado Association of Local Public Health Officials. So I look for opportunities for alignment with testimony. So if they're taking a support position, Broomfield has a support position, then it makes sense for me to go down and testify just to maximize our time.
Awesome. Thanks, Jason. Okay, Dave, I'll kick it back to you then to go through your bills.
Sure. Let me pull up my list here. I've got, a phone, an iPad, carrier pigeon. Anyway, so I want to touch base. Yesterday was 276. That's the elections bill modification. It is also in committee this afternoon as well, in State Veterans Military Affairs. The big part in that is the county reimbursement part. So I think that's something that the city and county Broomfield does support. We'll keep an eye on what's going on with that, and let you know if there's any major changes that affect that. But I don't foresee that happening. It's being run by Senate President Fenberg, so I'm going to guess that there's a good chance it gets out of the Senate pretty quickly. So that's one right there. And feel free to jump in with questions or put them in the chat, or follow them up afterwards. Anyway, always happy to jump in and try to answer anything. Another one that we had on our list is House Bill 1233. That's the electric vehicle charging requirements. That did pass out of the House, I want to say Tuesday. It was one of the ones that the House Republican caucus took a lot of time debating and quasi filibustering on, but it did pass out of the House. It's heading over to the Senate. I would imagine that gets scheduled for a committee in the next couple of days. As we're getting to the 3-week time, you're going to see bills in committee, and then maybe on the floor that night, and just moving quickly. So I know staff has been on top of stuff, and your lobby team, Ruth and I, are always checking what's going on, and talking to the legislators to let us know when things that we're tracking and working on are going to actually come up, because sometimes it's different than what you see in the printed calendar every morning. Next one, let's see if we got any other ones going on there. You already mentioned the forced pooling bill. That is in committee this afternoon. I know we've been talking with Boulder County and former Representative Mike Foote, who's helping run the bill. He's had some productive meetings with the Senate committee members. I know that as of Monday, Senator Heinrichsen from Pueblo was anti-bill, but might have some room to talk. So we'll check in with Mike and see what's going to happen in committee today. So there's that one. Mental health assessment. We think it's got a pretty good chance of coming out. I know that there was a lot of committee debate about that one in the House. We'll see if it's got that same sort of a fervor, but we do expect it to get out of the Senate Health Committee pretty easily today. And I've just noticed that just as right as she gets on, I've wrapped up my part. So there's Ruth.
Oh, you're muted, Ruth.
There we go. Sorry
Yeah.
about that. I'm literally in like an old-fashioned phone booth in the Capitol. There's nothing in here anymore, and it's a little cubby hideaway. So apologies about being late. I'm assured that Dave and Danae have explained the just very, very hectic nature down here. So we are appreciative of your understanding there, and your team, your staff team is just doing amazing work as well. So where we went over our list, but where shall I start? Just let me know what.
So I think Ruth, so Dave went over the bills he was going to cover. Let me just jump in on a
Great.
few, and then I think I think then we should dedicate the rest of the time to the land use bill and conversations. Because again, I think that's where the questions and concerns are. So just a couple to mention. One is the short-term rental bill. And I know Devin, CCAT has done a lot of work, and yesterday actually with the call with, the governing board and Senator Moreno, they did bring it up at the very end and just kind of mentioned, just for everybody's reference, our review of that is that it's really directed at statutory counties, which is not us. So now that's not saying that if there's an opportunity and council wanted to change our short-term rentals, that's a different conversation. But from the bill perspective, we didn't see any really big impacts on us as a home rule county. So just for reference for folks. And then two, I mentioned at the beginning, just to give some additional information. So one is around the COGCC and the regulatory framework. So I want to talk a little bit about it because I do feel like this bill has been different than, for example, the land use bill. We have actively, I look, Pat Gilbert's on the call, but we have actively participated in a stakeholder process with Chair Robbins from the COGCC for the last several months. Local governments have been on that call. We have given questions, we've given concerns. And actually what I heard on the call yesterday between CCAT and the Department of Natural Resources, that they called pretty last minute, a lot of the staff addressed the concerns that we have been saying. So I'm hopeful that when that bill is introduced, it will be what we have contributed. We won't know, obviously, until the bill is introduced. Many of the big items that there were concerns around, so the air capture, some of the carbon stuff has all been put to be addressed in the interim and removed from the draft bill. So again, I have not seen an updated draft bill since our last call. And Pat, I'm looking at you just to make sure you haven't seen one either. Okay, good. But we do anticipate it to still be introduced, which is crazy again, knowing we're going into 3 weeks. But that's the update on that one. But I thought the call yesterday was reinforcing that the feedback from the local government has been heard. Any questions on that bill or proposed bill? No. Okay. And it does involve a name change for the COGCC. I think that's a big thing just to mention. I think it's energy. I don't have it in front of me, but it does involve a name change. And then the second one that we wanted to mention, and I think this one probably will be more political. We've heard lots of terms around the bill. We anticipated it being introduced on Monday and then yesterday, and we still haven't seen it, but it's the air pollution bill. And essentially what it does is from my understanding, and Lori, please add, because I know you've dove into this and Pat as well, but really looking at putting some responsibility back onto operators to do modeling prior to the permit being issued from the COGCC around air quality and that cumulative impacts. It talks about cumulative impacts. It talks about disproportionate impacted communities, which are two of the things we've been working on from Broomfield around rulemaking. And those are specifically called out in the draft bill that we've seen. My understanding is that's still in confidential form. I haven't seen anything outside of that. But we have done a high level review of that. It does align with council's priorities. There are some areas we would want to clarify pending what the bill looks like when introduced. But again, haven't seen it formally. And Governor Polis did release a statement, I think, Lori, that was on Tuesday, saying it's coming. But we haven't seen anything formally introduced yet. So those are kind of the updates on those two kind of nebulous bills right now, but big bills still coming is what we're hearing. Lori, do you have anything to add to that one, or thoughts, questions?
I just add there's also the enforcement piece.
Oh,
And I did try to get clarification on Governor Polis's statement. They said it's just kind of the same blanket statement that comes out. It's not really going to slow up any of the efforts that that are already underway. It's not really conflicting. So I guess we just wait. I anticipate it to be released yesterday at the latest, and it's anybody's guess at this point.
And I want to give Ruth a shout out. She had reached out to Representative Wilford, who's a sponsor on the bill. And then we're continuing to work with Cindy Copeland at Boulder. I think they've been really active in the drafting of the bill. So as soon as we know more, we'll report it out. But that's kind of where those two big bills are at currently. And I think, Ruth, that gets us through. Before we jump into 213 land use bill, let me just pause and ask, are there any other bills that we did not cover? Questions, concerns, because I do think that has taken a lot of attention, and I just want to make sure if there are any other outstanding items, we address those before we dive into, it's kind of a black hole. Devin, I see your hand.
Yeah, so one of the bills that we signaled support for was the right of first refusal bill, and that is facing some hiccups. Do we have some information on kind of where that's going? And this is much more Broomfield specific.
Yeah, I can chime in. And by the way, folks, I am struggling to find the unmute button. So I notice I just changed my background. I may turn into a puppy during this call. I don't know. I just, I can't appreciate your grace. I just have to find the humor in it. It's nuts. So thank you, Council Member Schaaf, for asking about 1190. It was on the calendar yesterday for second reading in the Senate. It was laid over until Monday because of the challenges around the votes. There are about 5 to 7 Democratic members that are having concerns. Senator Winter isn't one of those. She's solid on the bill, so we don't have a Broomfield member that we have concerns about. But there are several others that maybe we have connections with. I can send the sort of target list to Danae to share with folks. And, part of the challenge here is just some philosophical disagreement about the role of government. Should local government have the right to step in and be the first one to purchase someone's property if they have other intentions for it? So we're facing some headwinds. There have been several amendments that were adopted to try to accommodate people's concerns. There's continued discussion about additional amendments. I'll really give a shout out to Megan McCollop at CML, who's helping to lead that conversation and really diving into the expertise of the policy implications. So we can share the amendments with you all if that's helpful. And then in all candor, the thinking is to get it through the Senate in maybe a hobbled form. One of the amendments, for example, says that you can't purchase a property that's any younger than 30 years. And so a 30-year property is going to have a lot of concerns and issues. And, it's not the most ideal for local governments who are trying to do housing projects. But if we can get the bill through the Senate, then go to conference committee and try to address some of these concerns, and then, try to get it back to a form that's more workable for local governments. So that's kind of the high level. Again, we're happy to share the 7 senators that, kind of on the target list. And if there's anything that either Broomfield as a city and county, or if individual members can do, be helpful.
And thanks for that, Ruth. I guess, you had touched on one of my questions, which is, right now we are, on a strong support of this. My concern is that if amendments continue to come into play that kind of water down this bill and really lose the ability for us to use this as a strong tool in terms of our future affordable housing goals. That's what I'm worried about. I'm worried about that it gets watered down so much that it doesn't become a tool that we are able to utilize. And what do we do at that point? Do we signal to them to say, hey, we're no longer in a strong support on this. We are now, backing away from this. I mean, what do we do at that point when it becomes so just almost not meaningless, but it becomes a very different bill?
Yeah.